All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to your Wednesday night webinar. I am Dr. Patrick McGrath, the Chief Clinical Officer at NOCD. NOCD is an online platform for the treatment of OCD and related disorders. We also do work with hoarding and body-focused repetitive behaviors and tics as well. If you're looking for exposure and response prevention therapy for OCD, or for habit reversal training for BFRBs, or CBT for hoarding, we've got you covered. And if you are in the United Kingdom or Canada or Australia or the United States, we can work with you. And if you're in other areas, give us a call and see what we can do. And please know this, we're always working on getting more and more insurances covered for an OCD treatment as well too. So keep checking back. If right now you're not covered, we continue to expand that all the time. As a reminder, tonight's information is it's information purposes. I'm not your therapist, unless you happen to be one of the members I work with. But for the most part, I'm going to say you're probably not. So take this as information, and always consult with your therapist or providers prior to making any changes in your treatment plans and or medications. We'll start off tonight with B. It says, hi, Dr. McGrath. Intrusive thoughts that used to bother you don't seem to have as much of an effect on you now. Your OCD is getting creative, and you keep getting stuck on thoughts that sound like, what if this is real? What if you feel like it's real? What if you feel like you like your thoughts? Notice all the what ifs there, which are always, for all of us, a standard thing that OCD loves to do, which is to jump right into the what if kinds of experiences for everybody. And B, you say it makes it hard not to do compulsions to disprove this recurring thought. Any tips? Is this a common OCD trick to loop you back into compulsions? Well, of course it is. Absolutely. That's one of the things that OCD loves to do. Hey, B, now that you're not so bothered by the thoughts, maybe that means you like the thoughts, or you want the thoughts, or you're going to do the thoughts. And wouldn't it be best just to check to make sure that that's not the case? So B, I'll do what I usually do at some point in the webinar. I'm going to talk about the fact that at some point during this webinar, I may leave it. I may go across the street with a Molotov cocktail, throwing it at my neighbor Dave's house. Then I'll go into the middle of the street. I'll poop into a bag. I'll light it on fire. I'll put it in front of my neighbor Josh's house. I'll ring the doorbell. He'll come out, see it, and I'll stomp on it to put the flames out. And then I'll have some flamey poop on his shoe. I'll laugh at him. And then I'll shoot some geese that are flying over the house, because there's a lot of them around here. And then I'll come back and I'll complete the webinar. Now, B, how much do I need to be afraid of that, right? Because guess what? That could happen. It could have happened even. It's a possibility. I'm going to go with it's an amazingly low one. I don't recall doing any of those things, but my mind could say to you, well, there was that time though, and you do have some alcohol in the house, and you have some rags, and you have a stove that's got flames, so you could have lit that on fire. And you do go outside once in a while, and living in the Midwest, it is very smoky around. Maybe it's smoky because you actually set your neighbor's house on fire, and even though it looks like it's still there, what if the front is still there, but that's all that's left? The back and everything is just gone and burned out. And you do have paper bags, so you could have pooped into a paper bag because you have the bags, and you're a human, so you poop, and you could have lit the bag on fire. And your neighbor does have a doorbell, so you could have rang the doorbell as well too. And then all these things that could have occurred and have actual possibilities, right? Now, of course, OCD loves to confuse possibility and probability, and make anything that is possible highly probable, if that's the case. And that's a general confusion that we see happening all of the time in obsessive compulsive disorder. So B, where you say here, is this rare? no, it happens a lot, right? It's what OCD does. And you say, what if it feels real? And what if you feel like it's real? And so I would say the same thing to you. B, what if what I just described to you is real? And what if it felt real? And what if I felt like I liked the thought of it as well too? In fact, I kind of do like the thought of it, because I keep using it as an example all the time here on the show. So B, I've now used that example. I've been doing this webinar for almost 3 years now. Actually, it probably is 3 years. I've been doing this now for 3 years. I've used that example in at least half of the shows I've done. So, and I kind of like the example, actually, because I think that it really reflects some things. So B, because I like that example, how many compulsions should I do in order to prevent it from happening? So B, if you could let me know and reply in the comments there, I would really appreciate it. I'd like to know by the end of the show how many compulsions I need to do in order to make sure that that doesn't happen. Because in your words, but what if I like it, right? And you say it makes it hard not to do compulsions to disprove it. So in order for me to disprove it, how many compulsions should I do to actually have it be disproved? So let me know. I'll be interested to hear what you say. And no matter how many you say, I'm not going to do any, just so you're aware. And when I don't do any, I'd like, just keep an eye on the news, everyone, and see, was there actually someone who ran across his street with a Molotov cocktail and threw it at his neighbor's house and then pooped in a bag and lit it on fire and put it in front of another neighbor's house, and they came outside and stomped on it, and then he shot some geese that were flying over his house, and then continued to do a webinar. And if you hear that on the news, well, it could be me, I suppose, because I've talked about it so much. Or it's a copycatter because someone's listening to this and they thought that that was a fun idea and they decided to do it. But is it possible? Sure. What if it happens? I mean, it could. Do I plan on doing anything to make it happen? Absolutely not. And do I need to do a compulsion to assure that it doesn't happen? I refuse to. I absolutely refuse to do that. And I'm going to allow for the chance of it to occur, because I don't know a world where there isn't chances for things to happen. And one of the fundamental flaws of obsessive compulsive disorder is OCD says we must live in a world where there is no potential, no opportunity for this thing that we feel is bad or wrong or awful or horrible to occur. And I don't know anyone who lives in that world, right? So OCD wants us to live in kind of a doppelganger world where you get to pick one thing that you have absolute assurance in. And in that world, that is the thing then. So you'll never actually have to worry about that thing because you'll have absolute assurance about it. But I don't even think that would work, because even if given absolute assurance about it, everyone with OCD would say, yeah, but are you sure? So I haven't yet figured out a way to give that assurance to anyone with OCD who wants it, nor has anyone with OCD ever felt that they actually received it as well. Okay. Anonymous says, good evening. Could you provide any insight into treating vasovagal syncope with ERP? Given my fear of injury, anything ranging from a paper cut to a heart attack, syncope has been the focus of your OCD for several years. Have you encountered similar cases in the past? So that's losing consciousness and potentially fainting for people who aren't familiar with that. Yeah, well, I do interoceptive ERP for people. So I have people purposely do things that are uncomfortable physically, like running in place and hyperventilating and breathing through straws, and learning that they can handle all of those physical sensations without having to do something to try to make them go away. Because I'm going to bet it's your very attempt to try to make them go away that actually is the thing that keeps them focused on in your head for so very much. And therefore, because you're so very focused on it, your entire life is probably spent checking and assessing things instead of living the life that you want to live. You're living this life of constantly trying to make sure nothing bad is going to happen, which probably isn't really the life that you're hoping to live. I'm going to suspect. Mary F says, I have real event OCD. Without going into detail, let's just say I've made mistakes. Oh, everyone, Mary has made mistakes. Now, I'm wondering, stoning or an option, or what everyone, wait, wait, hold on, Mary. We've all made mistakes. Okay, so so far nothing that you have said, Mary, that is different from anybody else listening to this, or from the guy doing the show as well, too. By the way, so you have made a mistake, and then in an attempt to correct it, made a similar mistake. Would writing a script saying something to the effect of "I may or may not be an idiot," or I may or may not feel guilty about this for the rest of my life, while then just going about my daily life, be an example of ERP? Well, I wouldn't have anyone write down I may or may not be an idiot. That would not be the way that I would go with it. I would, if you're going to have a script, I don't even need you to really focus on I may or may not feel guilty about it. If I'm doing ERP with you, I'm just going to have you do it until you're, whether or not you feel guilty, you just don't even care, right? You're just kind of neutral to it. So it's not that you have to think about a future of where you may or may not have guilt. It's okay, I have intrusive thoughts, and I know how to live with them, and I'm just going to move on and live my life. And that's just the way that it is that right there, without having to worry about if you may or may not in the future have any kind of concerns about something. That's the way that I would approach it. You are waiting to see an OCD specialist, having made the same type of mistake twice, the second time having involved another person who has forgiven you, eats at you every day. Thanks. So yeah, I think going along with what you said, I'm glad you're going to see someone, because my hope will be that they will get you to recognize that you are a human being. And as all humans, we've all goofed up and made some mistakes. And I'm wondering if all of us should just go around for the rest of our lives beating ourselves up over the mistakes that we've made as a way to not make them in the future. And if that's the case, Mary, if you've got nieces or nephews, I don't care how old they are, 3, 4 years old, and let's say that they've done something wrong, maybe they hit their little newborn sister or brother or something of that nature. I want you for the rest of their lives to remind them, hey, remember when you were 3 and you hit your newborn sister, and now there she's got that little scar right above her eye there. Yeah, I just want to remind you every day that was because of you, and what a just craphead you actually are. And please never forget that you've done that, because of course the only way to prevent you from ever doing that again will be to remind you on a daily basis that you did that in the past. So if that's the case that we all believe is going to prevent us from ever doing anything bad, it's a pretty sad life all of us are going to live, because none of us are going to forgive ourselves, much less anybody else, for anything that's ever happened. And therefore, all we're going to do all day long whenever we see anybody go, yeah, I remember that fault you did to me, and oh, that thing you did to me, and oh God, I hate you, and you're a really horrible, awful person. And how do we live in a society then where all we are doing is focusing on putting ourselves and everybody else down? It seems to me like it would be a failure in a way to live. But we know that OCD is attempting to get people to fail in living the way they want to live, because OCD doesn't care about the way that you want to live. OCD only wants you to live in the way that it wants you to live, because OCD believes it's the most important thing in your life, and nothing else is as important as OCD. Christy says you've been doing ERP for 3 months and you've barely have any intrusive thoughts. And if you do, they don't bother you. So happy. Tips for staying recovered. Thanks. Yes, Christy, keep doing exactly what you've been doing, because if it's worked that well, that quickly, then keep on going with it. I tell people, do something every day that frightens you. Make sure that every day you're doing an ERP exercise, and allow yourself on a daily basis to learn that you can handle the things that you are afraid of, and just don't give up on that. Going forward, that is just something that you do every single day. You purposely put yourself in a bit of an uncomfortable kind of situation, and you allow yourself to learn that you can handle that experience, and you don't shy away from difficult types of things, but you face them head on, and you prove on a daily basis that you are stronger than your OCD has ever allowed you to think that you are, because OCD wants you to believe that you are weak and that there's nothing that you can do without it. But that's simply not the case at all. Otherwise, if it were true, my job would be to give OCD to people. I would go up to people who are having a difficult time, and I would say, I'm wondering if the reason why you're having a difficult time is you don't have enough OCD in your life, and I'd like to prescribe a little bit more to you. So why don't you have this? And I think that this will really be helpful, right? No, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't want to do that. And we don't know anybody who's ever done better in life because of that. So That's just not the way that we're going to approach things for people, is give them more obsessive compulsive disorder. Sunshine Bird says, I'm doing a lot of compulsions lately. You have a lot of thought action fusion and false memory. You know that the thoughts are false, but the what if fear is so high. You need to get better for your son and husband, and to be an awesome mom, you know you are. Absolutely. I thought replace, boo. And the compulsions are physical, redoing a task, boo, like washing a dish, retyping an email, and rumination. Obviously, I know there is no correlation between a miscellaneous task and the intrusive thought. The more I thought replace, the worse it gets. But how do I take the leap of faith that this is OCD and not going to come true? I also do magical thinking. Obviously, that is true. I was going to go into that, but you've said it already. With doing things 3 times, it's such an annoying disorder. How to dismiss the thoughts? Thank you. Well, you don't dismiss the thoughts. I wish that we could just dismiss the thoughts. That would be lovely. I think you can dismiss the thoughts after you've done ERP, but you're not going to dismiss the thoughts before you do ERP, which means you are going to have to take that leap of faith. Now, as I said at the beginning, Sunshine Bird, we'll say by the end of the show, there's a darn good possibility that I am going to leave this webinar, go across the street with a Molotov cocktail, throw it at my neighbor's house and set it on fire, then poop in a bag in the middle of the street, light it on fire, put it in front of my neighbor Josh's house. He's going to come outside and there's going to be a flaming bag of poop. He's going to stomp on it. It's going to get poopy flames on him, and I'm going to laugh at him. And then I'm going to shoot some geese that are flying over my house, and then I'm going to come back and finish the webinar. Sunshine, how much fear do I have to have of that, and how much thought replacement should I do for that thought? I'm just curious. So Sunshine Bird, if you could type in at the bottom there how much thought replacement I should be doing in order to prevent that from happening. And I will promise you this, I will do none whatsoever. And we'll see now if also for yours this happens. So now we've got 2 different people with 2 different kind of ways of looking at OCD. Me with the same example, does that double make it now possible that I'm going to do it, because I'm not going to do either of the compulsions that the 2 of you would recommend probably for me to do in order to prevent that thing from happening. I'm just going to let it be out there and take the chance and see what happens and live in that world. Matt B says, what would be great mindfulness skills to engage with when triggered by depersonalization? Thanks for everything you do for the OCD community. Oh, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Matt, one of the things that I do instead of mindfulness for depersonalization or derealization is I'm going to go back to, I like to do interoceptive exposure work for people who have this. So sometimes a lot of buildup of physical sensations can create some of these types of experiences. So what I would have you do is work with a therapist who can kind of do some of these exercises that might create some of these kinds of experiences for you. So some people will find that after 5 minutes of hyperventilating, they feel a bit of this, or maybe all body muscle tension or something like that, running in place, shaking your head back and forth, breathing through a straw. All these kinds of things can create various types of sensations, and feeling derealized or depersonalized may be one of them. So I would run through a series of these exercises to see which are the ones that may actually lead you to feeling that way. And then you keep practicing those exercises and you allow yourself to learn that, oh, I can handle that feeling. I don't need to do something to run away or hide from it. It's not actually that bad or awful, horrible, dangerous, and it isn't actually going to hurt me whatsoever. All right. The Purple Girl says, I got on the same bus where people were yelling at you for being in the way due to your OCD. I'm not at a place where I can sit in the seats. How do I not ruminate and let it bother me, cause bus anxiety? I feel bad that I'm in the way. I just have no choice about riding on the bus until my car is fixed. Regardless of the bus, you still get some anxiety after the lady blew up me last time. I try to ride the double bus where I'm not in the way, but that isn't always possible. You overheard someone on the bus complaining about you and how angry they were, and you started crying. You didn't say a word to any of them today or then, and now you're ruminating about it. Do you know any OCD therapists in New York that take blue. Yeah. So one of the ways that you can look up some therapists would be check out NOCD at NOCD.com, and you can go there simply to see if we have therapists that might take your insurance. If you don't find any there that take your insurance, you can go also to adaa.org or abct.org or iocdf.org. So I'm going to put those in the chat. And you can check those out as well too. Oops. I think the last one did cut off there. Let me try that again. So see if those might help you. Now, I would say this. The goal, obviously, would be to try to work on yourself or with someone as quickly as possible on all of the things that lead you to get in the way of people on the bus, right? Because obviously we know this, doing compulsions is not going to make riding the bus easier for you. It may feel like it does at the moment, but in the long term, it's the thing that actually makes it more difficult to ride the bus over time instead of easier. So you will probably find that every day you've got to do a little bit more compulsing on the bus than you did the day before. So if doing compulsions was actually helpful, what we would find is this: we would see that every day I have to do less compulsions when I get on the bus because my OCD now is getting better. Compulsions don't help you. They make you worse, right? They feel great in the moment in terms of the relief of the anxiety that they bring to you. Not great in the sense that, woohoo, I really enjoyed that, but great in the sense of the relief that you experience. But what they don't do is help OCD. They make it worse. Remember this: compulsions are the food of obsessive compulsive disorder. So the more compulsions you do, the more you're feeding OCD. And the more you feed OCD, the bigger it gets. It's kind of like that plant from Little Shop of Horrors, feed me, Seymour, feed me, please. And so in Little Shop of Horrors, this plant just gets bigger and bigger the more he feeds it, till the point that it's just out of control. And if you see the original ending of the movie, all the plants just go over and take over the world and just destroy buildings and everything. And all the armies of the world can't stop them. And everybody dies gruesome, awful, horrible deaths eaten by plants. It's very kitschy if you watch it. But you don't make the plant smaller by feeding it, and you don't make OCD smaller by doing compulsions. Even though OCD tricks you into saying, I promise you will feel better if you do this compulsion right now. And it's not a total trick in a way, because you do feel relief from all the discomfort or anxiety or stress or guilt or shame or whatever uncomfortable kind of emotion it is that you're feeling at that point in time. But then comes the next time, and the next time, and the next time, and the next time. And the more and more and more compulsions that you do, and the more and more that you get ingrained into OCD, and the more and more stuck you become in this whole experience. And believe me, if we thought for a second that doing more compulsions helped OCD, then we as a profession would be saying to you on a daily basis, please do more compulsions. I mean, you know why your OCD's not getting better? You're not doing enough compulsions. So do more. Well, that would be ridiculous, right? There is no way that we would ever say that to anybody whatsoever. It's quite the opposite, actually. If you want to overcome OCD, you do less compulsions. You stop feeding the beast, right? So, Purple Girl, you're going to be on the bus again tomorrow. And before you get on the bus, you're going to be thinking about the fact that you might do compulsions on the bus. Well, this is already going to make you anxious before you get on the bus. And then you're going to think about, if you do compulsions, there might be people that yell at you on the bus. And that's going to make you even more anxious about being on the bus. And now you're going to enter the bus and you're going to be really anxious. And OCD is going to be like, all right, we got some food going already. It's already pumping. Let's go. And now you're going to get on the bus. And because of the anxiety and the discomfort and whatever else that you're feeling, the likelihood of getting stuck doing compulsions has actually increased instead of decreased. So I'll challenge you to try something. I'll challenge you tomorrow to get on the bus and purposely make a mistake and then walk past it and just see how it goes. Now, your OCD is going to be screaming at you, right? But Another thing to put in the comments at the bottom, if any of you have ever had OCD tell you the truth, please write it in on the bottom. I'd like to find out if that's ever happened. If it has, we'll get together later. We'll write a book and we'll talk about how we have finally found the truthiest OCD in the world. Now, I haven't ever seen it yet, but I'm always on the lookout. I could be wrong one day, and I could find out suddenly that, you know what? The best way to live life is with obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't think I'm going to discover that. I don't think I'm going to ever find that, but who knows, right? I could be wrong. And yet, here's what I know from all the people I've treated. As they have decreased compulsions, their lives have gotten better. Not as they have increased them. So that's what I'm going to go with, along with the research that's out there as well, too. George says, I'm struggling with the OCD theme of schizophrenia, fear of hearing voices. Because of this obsession, your mind is trying to project imaging voices in your head based on fears of it happening. Any advice, please? George, there's a couple of things. Like if you were in the office with me and I was doing any work with you, I might even make a loop tape or something that had random voices on it that you would just kind of listen to over and over again. And you would learn just to be able to be okay with the fact that now and then you heard one of them and that it didn't have to mean anything. It is interesting that people with OCD who have this fear, I've not seen any of them actually develop what it is they're afraid of, be it schizophrenia or other mental health issues or physical health issues or anything like that. I really don't see people coming in later going, oh yeah, that thing I was afraid of. Yeah, I actually got it. Because again, it's the what if kind of thing, right? So George, just because that's there, I'm wondering how much time and attention you actually have to give it. And I'm wondering also what you're getting out of it as well, too. So maybe you hear things once in a while, right? I live in this house alone now, and I hear lots of creaks and pops and all sorts of things that when I wasn't alone in the house, I could attribute to other people being in the home or walking around or doing things. But once you're alone in a house, you realize how noisy everything is. Maybe I'm not actually hearing those noises. Maybe they're all in my head, and should I go get them checked out? Or can I just live with the fact that, I'm going to hear things now and then? Maybe some people do or do not hear them. In fact, I'm always hearing something that nobody else hears. I have tinnitus. And so therefore, I'm always hearing a sound that nobody else is actually hearing. And does that then mean that I have schizophrenia because I actually do have a sound that I hear that no one else in the world hears? So maybe it's not tinnitus. Maybe it's schizophrenia. George, how much time should I spend researching that to find out if it might actually be that versus it's just tinnitus, right? Because I've never actually had it diagnosed by anyone. I know enough about tinnitus that I've diagnosed it for myself, but maybe I'm wrong and I'm just fooling myself. And this sound is actually a schizophrenic hum. Maybe there's just a cat that's living in my head that's making a humming sound. And what if that's the case, right? What if that's what it is instead of tinnitus? George, how much time should I be spending now researching to see if that's the case? And if I start to believe that, would there be anything that could at all 100% convince me of the fact that it wasn't a humming cat in my head? So now that I've said that, I've never said it before. Now I'm going to live with the fact that I believe it's tinnitus, but there's an option for it to be a humming cat that's living in my head as well, too. And guess what? Along with the fact that I'm not going to, we're almost on a half hour left until I potentially blow up several houses in the neighborhood. If anybody wants to call the authorities on me, now might be the time because there's a half hour left until it potentially happens. But yeah, I may live the rest of my life with a cat humming in my head, or I just have tinnitus, and I'll live with both of those things and the recognition that either one could be what it is. Susie says you have relationship OCD about attraction to your husband. You're fixated on his face and if you're attracted to him or not, and if you love him or if you're living a lie. Any advice on exposure ideas? Well, I'm not going to try to convince you that you love your husband. I'm not going to try to convince you that you find him attractive at all. And the reason for that is OCD won't believe me no matter what I try to convince you of. So there's not enough evidence in the world to convince you that you love your husband enough. There's not going to be enough evidence in the world that says that you think your husband is attractive enough for OCD to then say, oh yeah, okay, cool, we're good now. Everything's fine. All right, no need to worry or be concerned about that anymore. That just is not going to happen. So guess what? We're not going to try that. That's not the way that we're going to go. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to allow for the fact that, look, there's other people who are attractive in the world, and some I might even find more attractive than my partner. And, look at that. That's a person that I met that I really connected with. Does that mean? I don't know. I think OCD believes in the notion of a soulmate. I'm just going to go off the cuff here and tell you what I personally believe. This has no evidence or papers written about it. I personally believe that there's probably about 10,000 people in the world that are your right person, and it just so happens to be which one of them you meet and wherever you're at. Otherwise, it's always amazing that your soulmate is usually, up until recently with the internet dating, your soulmate was always usually within a mile of where you were, right? So I think there's 10,000 people out there that we're all good for. And you might be with one of them, and then you might meet another one of them somewhere along the way too, and have this feeling and go, why? That's not supposed to happen. But you might have met another one of your 10,000. And so if that's the case, well, then you deal with the fact that you have feelings. Guess what? You're a human being and you have feelings. And sometimes we might be frustrated with our spouses, and then we meet someone else and we just get caught up in a thought or a fantasy or something like that. It doesn't have to mean anything, right? But that phrase is tough to say to people with OCD. The idea that it doesn't have to mean anything falls on deaf ears in the world of obsessive compulsive disorder, because in the world of obsessive compulsive disorder, everything means everything. Take a moment and think about that, everybody, for a moment. In the world of obsessive compulsive disorder, everything means everything, right? There's nothing that your OCD couldn't be presented with that it wouldn't be able to turn on its head somehow and make it into something bad or awful or horrible. Hey, OCD, look at this brand new, baby kitten that was just born. Yeah, but if I hold it, I could drop it and then it would break its neck and I'd be responsible for its death. Oh, okay. All right. Well, hey, OCD, check out this brand new car. Yes, but if I drive it, I could run over a bunch of children who are crossing the street getting off of a bus. Oh, okay. Oh, we can't do that. Hey, OCD, look at this beautiful person that I'm going to introduce you to. Yeah, but what if, we're into the relationship and then suddenly in a few years we realize that we don't actually love each other as much as we're supposed to, and then we both meet other people, but we've already had children, and now we've wasted all that time and energy, then we got to tell the kids, and it's going to ruin their lives, and it's going to make everything awful and horrible. Oh, okay, well, that's another. And can you give anything to OCD that it won't put a turd on? No. I mean, it's just what it does. It's the way that it works, right? And so if our goal is, can't I just have a thought that OCD isn't going to influence? Sometimes my answer to that to people is no. But guess what? You don't have to care that OCD influences it, right? I could say to you, can't I just have a moment of silence? And the answer, guess what, is no. I will never hear silence again. I have not heard it for 20 years, and I will never hear it before I die. Because at the moment, at least, there is no cure for tinnitus. So I am resigned to the fact that 24 hours a day, 365 or 66 days in a year, I will never, ever, ever hear silence. I can't even tell you what silence is. I don't even remember what silence is, because for over 20 years, I've had this hum in my head, which could also be a cat humming as well, too, as we talked about earlier. Or it could be tinnitus, one or the other. But, and I live with that, right? And I could say tomorrow morning, you know what? I've got this really important job at NOCD, but you know what? I can't really do it until I get rid of the hum in my head. So first, hey, everyone with OCD, I know you might rely on me and the team that I direct to make sure that we're helping you, but we're going to put a pause on that first, because I really can't do anything else until I stop this hum in my head. What? There's no cure for it? Unacceptable. So everyone just hold off. I'm going to just do all sorts of research until I find the cure. Now, OCD does that too. OCD loves to take philosophical questions like existential OCD and say, yeah, but you have to have an answer to it. Well, philosophers have debated this for 3,000 years. Yeah, that doesn't matter. I need to be the one to find the answer. I have to find it. Can't go on without it. So, all right. Oh, hey, we're over our halfway mark. Just a reminder to everyone, check out NOCD.com if you're looking for an online platform for the treatment of obsessive compulsive disorder. And we also treat body-focused repetitive behaviors and tics and hoarding as well, too, at NOCD. Go to NOCD.com for that. And one of the things that I really enjoy us doing as well, if you like these webinars and you want to talk to me or somebody on my team, we do NOCD 411 sessions. These are education sessions that we do through NOCD, where we will be happy to chat with you and family or friends or whatever. If you have OCD and you just want to know a bit about us and what we do and what therapy might look like, and just kind of talk to somebody before you go into it, or if you're a family member of someone who's not quite ready for prime time therapy yet and you just want to know, like, hey, here's what's happening in our family, what can we do? We'd be happy to chat with you. And you can request one of our NOCD 411 sessions with our awesome care team. And by the way, still have some openings for this month here in June. So if you want to, if your goal was by the end of the first half of the year that you were going to get yourself the help that you needed, you got a couple of days left. So reach out to NOCD.com. And we've got people even standing around there tonight ready to book a session for you. So check us out. Standing Strong tonight says, how do you approach situations when the thoughts themselves make the negative outcome you fear more likely to happen, like with insomnia? Well, I'm going to bet, Standing Strong, that what you're doing is with insomnia, you're hoping not to have insomnia. And that hope to not have insomnia is kind of like, everybody probably knows what's coming. I hope you don't think of a pink elephant. And there it is. But hey, don't think of it, right? Stop thinking of a pink elephant. Do not think about pink elephants whatsoever. Just don't think of a pink elephant. And the more you hope to not think of a pink elephant, the more likely you are to think of a pink elephant. So therefore, guess what? The more you hope to not have insomnia, the more likely you are to probably have insomnia. So Standing Strong, one thing I would tell you to do if you're working with me and say, well, let's go to bed tonight hoping we have insomnia, right? But let's also practice good sleep hygiene as well, too. So what's good sleep hygiene? Well, it might be an hour before I go to sleep, I'm going to turn off all screens. I can read a book, I can listen to the radio, but I'm going to have no screens on. When I go to bed, bed is for two purposes, fun times and for sleep. That's it. There is no reading in bed. There's no phone in bed. You do not watch television while you're in bed. You just do one of those two things. That is it. And if you're in bed and you are not able to fall asleep within 15 minutes, you get out of bed and you, again, don't turn on a screen or something like that. And you can sit in a chair and you can read with a low light or something like that, but do not go engage in lots of activities or anything like that. And when you start to feel tired again, you can go back into bed. Now, this may take a couple of nights to do, right? It is possible that this will be a bit of a process, but you can develop really good sleep hygiene habits and you can start to practice them. And you can work with your therapist on doing that along with the OCD as well, too. Jessica says, do you have any suggestions for moral scrupulosity exposures not focused on religion that aren't scripts, more focused on accidentally breaking a rule, a law, etc.? Well, yes, there's so many of them. You could walk into someone where there's a greeter who says hello to you and not greet them back. You could go to a restaurant and tip somebody. If 15 or 8, let's say 18% is the standard tip, you can tip them 17.99% tip instead of 18% tip. You could not hold the door for somebody who's behind you. All these just little things that are probably considered, courtesies, things that you could do on a daily basis for folk. You could not do those and allow yourself to live with that twinge of guilt that you might have over the fact that you didn't do those things. Now, we're not trying to make you into a bad person, and we're not saying that you have to do these things forever. I want you to do them until OCD doesn't pick on you for not doing them anymore, and then or for doing those things. And then once OCD stops picking on you for doing those things, then you can go back to doing what you would normally do. So I don't care if you like to hold the door for people. That's great. But you can practice not doing it and dealing with the moral ickiness that you may have, say, for not having done it. Okay, and see how that goes. Gel Pen says, can birth control affect OCD symptoms? It can. There are people who find that when they go on birth control that it makes OCD symptoms more manageable. That's what I've typically seen for people, but I suppose the other way could happen as well too. We know for people who can take birth control that hormonal experiences definitely can affect obsessive compulsive disorder. So I would consult your prescriber on those to find out. DC says, hey, doc, I'm interested in reading the book, You Are Not Your Brain, but I'm reluctant to do so for fear of being triggered. Any advice? Thank you. Well, I don't know about the book, so I can't talk to you specifically about what's in the book, but if you're working with a therapist, maybe you guys could work together on how you approach reading the book and do it as an exposure and response prevention exercise to see where it goes. So Michael says, you have OCD obsessions of worrying about what people think of you, or are they mad at you? Any recommendations or reasoning why? Thanks. Well, why can be a myriad of things. If you've made a mistake in the past and somebody was angry or frustrated at you and it was overwhelming, you'd never want that to happen again, of course. And you could also have kind of that moral scrupulousness, which believes that you have to perform at a very high level. And if you don't, you're somehow failing people and they'll be disappointed in you. There's lots of reasons why that can be there. So again, similar to what I said in the answer earlier, I would have you, Michael, do small little things that could lead people to potentially not think nicely about you, right? I even had someone once who, when I was at the hospital, there was a paperclip on the floor, and they went to pick it up, and I said, why are you picking that up? And they said, well, because what if somebody trips on it and then they fall and I didn't do something about it and it would be my fault? I said, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to leave the paperclip there. And luckily there was just a bench right down the hall. And we sat on the bench for an hour and we just watched people, and we watched people step on the paperclip, and sometimes it shot across the floor and everything like that. And we just dealt with the fact that it was there, and we knew it was there, and we knew that people were going to step on it, and we weren't going to warn them about it, and we weren't going to have people holding up signs that says beware of paper clips on floor or anything like that. We were just going to allow for the thing to happen. And of course, nothing happened. Now, could it have? Okay. Maybe that 1 in a million person hits that paperclip just right and their foot goes flying across the room or something like that, and they land on their head or something of that nature. But you know what? I've seen people do that just stepping out of their car as well, too. So should we warn everybody as they're getting out of their car, hey, be really careful there, just running around the parking lot all day long? I'm sure the police would eventually show up, say, sir, ma'am, why do you keep harassing people when they're getting out of their car? Oh, I'm just trying to be very altruistic, officer, to make sure that nobody twists an ankle when they get out of their car. Okay, well, you're kind of pestering people. So if you could please leave the parking lot. But sir, if I do that, then people may twist an ankle and it will be my fault. It'll be awful and horrible. I'm really here to help people. Okay, I'm going to give you one more try here, sir, ma'am, to get out of the parking lot. And if you don't, we'll be trespassing you, and then you'll never be allowed back here again. Okay, fine. I'll go to the Burger King parking lot across the street again. And if you do, we will show up there and we will do the same thing until you are trespassed from every single parking lot in the city, and you'll have to move. It could get to that ridiculous of a level. for some kind of people in these types of things, right? So Leslie says, nice haircut. Well, thank you. I kind of enjoyed it myself. I'm actually about 0.4 miles an hour faster in my running now due to the aerodynamics of it all. So it's lovely. Brian says, is what if usually OCD, or can it just be generalized anxiety? Well, it can. I just go to it. It's anxiety, and anxiety can be GAD and OCD and phobias and panic and all of those kinds of things. So absolutely, it's going to be involved. What if to me is the basis of most anxiety and OCD and trauma-based kinds of disorders is that those two words, that what if question that people have. Naja says, can OCD make you think you're hearing things? OCD can lead you to having any kind of experiences, so I don't see why something like that wouldn't happen as well, too. Absolutely. Andrea says, I'm having tons of OCD dreams. I can't really do anything about them as I'm sleeping. What can I do to prevent them? Well, what I would do here, Andrea, is I would script those dreams and maybe loop tape those dreams, and I would just listen to them during the daytime until you're so bored with them that I'm going to bet you're going to have less and less of them during the evening and nighttime when you're sleeping, because you've dealt with them so much during the daytime. So see how that goes. Brian says, hey Brian. Leslie says, or Lady Hawk's Coloring Cave. Nice name. You tend not to want to cook because of that. That makes dishes dirty. Since you feel like you can clean everything, you avoid cooking. Sounds like OCD. Yeah, I mean, if you get to the point where cleaning things is so overwhelming that you just don't ever need to do anything to have to do it, you can do that. I've seen people who would call themselves clean freaks who haven't showered in months. And the reason is, once they get in the shower, it's like a 7-hour process to shower. And so it's just easier not to shower than it is to shower, even though they hate the fact that they're not showering because they feel gross. But showering feels worse to them because it's so ritualized and the way that they have to approach it. So therefore they don't actually shower. So it's fascinating, right? That the very thing that I'm afraid of might be the very thing that happens to me. If I'm afraid of being dirty, what am I going to do? I'm going to live dirty. Why? Because of how overwhelming it is to not to be dirty. Kenny says you were given the Yale Brown Obsessive Compulsive Scale. Yeah, kind of a standard OCD questionnaire that's out there. There's other ones too, like the DOCS and the OCI. So there are several ones that are out there about that. Lana says, like the fainting goat. Oh, that's funny. And Matt B says, likes the Molotov cocktail. Thanks. Yes. Oh, by the way, we are 12 minutes potentially away from me firebombing my neighbor's house with a Molotov cocktail. So everyone get ready to call the authorities on me. You've got 12 minutes, just saying. CMC RC14 says, glad to be here. My OCD has skyrocketed lately. Boo, 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 boo. Intrusive thoughts going crazy, and you catch yourself checking things so much more. Obviously, your checking things is not going to help you, and probably what's helping to skyrocket your OCD. Even though doing the checking feels good in the moment, it's going to be worse for you in the long term. So remember this. Do the opposite of what OCD wants you to do if you want to feel better. Do what OCD wants you to do, and you're going to feel worse. I can't stress that enough, everyone. I just can't stress that enough. Do what OCD wants you to do. You are not going to feel better. It just ain't going to happen. Okay? It's not the way that it works. Theodora says, can relationship partner-focused OCD begin at the beginning of dating? Of course, before an established relationship. Sure, rather than later in a relationship. Why not? It makes it hard to determine what OCD is and what isn't. I mean, if it's a relationship, it doesn't matter how intense it is or how new it is or old it is or whatever. OCD is going to be the lead turd in the punch bowl for whatever party it belongs to. Even if it's a brand new party, it's still going to be floating in that punch bowl, that it is. So, ain't fun, right? It ain't a fun disorder, and it's not going to be helpful or good for you. Smiley says, how do we sit with urges? Well, Smiley, I've been sitting with an urge to throw a Molotov cocktail at my neighbor's house for the last 49 minutes now. So maybe by just seeing that you recognize that I've had that urge to go do that. And I've had that urge for the last 3 years, as I've talked about it on this show as well, too. So far, I'm thinking you haven't read it in the news, and I haven't checked across the street today to see if the house is there. But I do live in the Midwest, and it is very smoky around here. So maybe it's because I did throw some Molotov cocktails. Canada fires? Nah. Molotov cocktails thrown from Dr. McGrath? 100%. That's got to be what it was. That's why it's so smoky around here. My apologies, everyone in the Midwest. I'm the cause of all the smoke in the air because of all the Molotov cocktails that I've been throwing at all the people's houses. All my bad. You've been having urges to light your hair on fire for years, but you're actually scared one of these days you're actually going to do it. So, I'm going to bet that leads to a lot of compulsions of making sure that there's nothing incendiary around you or no candles or anything like that. Now, I'm never going to do an ERP. I'm glad you brought something like this up. I would never do an ERP of let's light your hair on fire and see what happens. No, that's not our goal. And we're not even going to test. Let's get your hair as close to a flame as we can to see if we light it on fire. No, that's dumb. We're not going to do that either. But what you can do is you can have a candle up on a mantle and be in a room with it. You can have a stove that's a gas stove and flames, and you can cook, and you can do things like everybody else does who has hair and who is around flames, and recognize that just because you have a thought that will light your hair on fire or that you'll do something to make it be on fire does not mean at all that you're going to do it or in any way, right? So don't confuse what if I want to with I'm going to, right? They're two very, very different things. What if I want to does not equal I am going to, just so you know. All right. Baca says, if I'm sure I have sexual orientation OCD, does that mean I'm not gay? Well, I don't know what you are, so I can't say that it does. It means that you are or are not, whatever it is as well, too. I'm not saying that it means anything. I'm just saying that it's sexual orientation is all about doubting the identity with which you currently identify, right? And so it's a what if I'm not this thing that I think that I am, or that I currently am living as. It doesn't mean that in the future I won't be something or something else or something like that. I can't give you that guarantee whatsoever, right? But what I can tell you is that just because you have doubts about what you are doesn't mean that you're the opposite of what it is, right? You can absolutely be what you are and have doubts about it. Just like you can, well, I mean, I'll tell you an example I did actually one time. I had someone come in my office and we were doing a session. And about halfway through the session, I was, this was a person who wanted constant reassurance and was very convinced that they were something and was mad that nobody else was seeing that that's what they were. And why were all these people trying to convince them that they weren't that thing? And so I said, I'm a little angry at you right now. And they looked at me and said, what are you talking about? Why are you angry at me? And I said, well, I'm angry at you because you have not acknowledged a very, very obvious thing. Okay, what have I not acknowledged? I said, you have not acknowledged the fact that when I, Dr. McGrath, woke up this morning, my skin was green. And now I am as green as Kermit the Frog. And they looked at me and said, your skin's not green. I said, see, that's what everybody keeps telling me. Why does everybody keep telling me that my skin is not green? And I held up something green. I said, look, you can't tell where my skin ends and that thing begins. I mean, it's like they're one and the same. There's absolutely no difference between that and my skin at all. And we had this conversation for about 10 minutes or so. And finally, after 10 minutes, and the person was getting more and more frustrated with me in the session, they're like, why are we having this stupid discussion? It's just asinine that you keep saying this. I can't understand why you're doing this. Now, I had a very good relationship with this person, right? And if you know me well enough from these, you know that sometimes I'm a bit of a sarcastic person. So I had a good enough relationship that I could say the statement that I'm going to say out loud to you all. And I said to them, I just wanted to see what it's like to talk to you when you're stuck in your OCD. And they sat back in the chair, had kind of a light bulb moment. And they said to me, I was never going to convince you that your skin wasn't green, was I? I said, no. No matter how hard you tried. And then they said, and no one's ever going to convince me either, are they? I said, no. No matter how hard they try. And we got to the point that it wasn't about other people convincing them. It was about them learning to handle whatever it was that was going on. They were looking for this external thing to happen and were frustrated at their friends and their family for not convincing them and not believing them and all of these things. When the reality of it was the problem wasn't external, it was internal. This person was searching for something that was never going to happen, which was 100% guaranteed answer. So it was a real breakthrough in our session. And it was one of my favorite sessions that I ever did, actually, in that moment. But again, we had a really good relationship to be able to do something like that. But it was powerful. It was very, very powerful. So B says, I see your point. Wonderful. Thank you. Fit floors. Should you avoid caffeine if you have OCD and anxiety? I recommend that it's not a bad idea because caffeine is just going to ramp everything up. Smoking, same thing. Nicotine, the stimulant, is going to ramp everything up. Many people say, oh, but having a cigarette calms me down. Physiologically, it does not. It actually increases your heart rate and all sorts of things. What it does, though, is allow you to leave a situation if you're uncomfortable because you got to go outside. You got to have that cigarette. So smoking does not actually physiologically make you feel better, but it might psychologically make you feel better. Okay, and those are two, of course, very, very different kinds of things that are going on. I'm just going to jump down to the end here a little bit and see if anybody wrote anything that they felt that their OCD actually helped them whatsoever. I'm seeing nothing there whatsoever. Okay, so that's good. Awesome. Nobody thinks that OCD has made their life better. All right. Now, as we kind of discussed at the beginning, I've had almost an hour now to go ahead and take a bottle of alcohol, throw a rag in it, light it on fire, run across the street, throw it at my neighbor's house, setting it ablaze. Then going in the middle of the street, pooping in a bag, lighting it on fire, putting it in front of my other neighbor's house, ringing his doorbell, him coming out, stomping on it, getting a foot full of poopy flames, shooting some geese, coming back here, completing the webinar. I suppose I could have done it. And I could even go back and maybe watch this webinar and I could say, yeah, but it looks like it might have glitched there. What if during that glitch, it was actually a few minutes long and then that's when I did it, right? I have to know time at all times. There can be no pause. There can be no stop. I must have a guarantee of where I was or where I've been at all times in order to know that everything's fine or okay. Because if there's even a millisecond lost, how can you guarantee to me that something bad didn't happen in that point in time and I didn't do something to someone in some way? And I hope you all recognize at the end here, the theme is this. There are no guarantees. If you're looking for them, you're looking to satisfy OCD. And if you're looking to satisfy OCD, you're on a fool's journey because no one with OCD has ever felt satisfied by trying to satisfy their OCD. Satisfaction only comes by recognizing, oh, wait, if I want to feel better, it's to not do what OCD wants me to do, not to do everything OCD wants me to do. My goal for all of you, live the life that you want to live and not the life that OCD wants you to live. And with that, I remind all of you, if you're looking for treatment for obsessive compulsive disorder or related disorders, check us out at NOCD.com. And if you're in the UK or Canada or Australia and the United States, we can work with you. And in the US, we're getting more and more insurance companies all the time to help out. And if you're a friend or relative of someone with OCD and you've got questions about it, check us out at NOCD.com as well and set up a NOCD 411 session with us. And we'd be happy to give you some education about OCD OCD and the role of safety behaviors in the maintenance of OCD as well too. It has been, as always, a joy to be with all of you. I will not be here next week. We will have a rerun next week because the OCD conference is coming up, everyone. So hopefully I'll get to see some of you there. Until 2 weeks from now, and when Dr. Grayson will be back with us, my best to all of you. See you soon. Tonight,